The aim of this conference is to actually basically put people into the picture of sustainability. All too often there's a focus on the idea of place, and there's also a focus on people, as if they're two different things. If we are genuinely going to actually create a green and environmental future for Cornwall and also for the world, we need to actually understand and implement strategies which actually put people and put cultures centre stage.
There are a few communities in Cornwall where there's a real sort of resurgence in community. You can take, for instance, Newlyn, which in the 19th century and in the early 20th century went through really hard times. The fishing fleet nearly died out. But yet now it's one of the largest ports in the UK, very vibrant, thriving community. And I was just looking at historically what's led up to that, and I believe it's the community atmosphere, that sense of belonging. Fishing has been shown to be very important in creating identity, partly because of the family ties and the generations of doing that industry. And it's quite interesting to see a traditional industry in Cornwall thriving. Well, I thought there were some really, really interesting talks, and I really liked the focus in the early morning about sort of leading policy from a local community point of view rather than a big government society viewpoint. I loved the idea that young children were learning Cornish because of the importance of identity, and it's been shown that when people have a strong sense of identity and sense of place, then in hard times they are the communities that really do well.
Our campaigns are very broad, but effectively we're building campaigns to protect waves, oceans and beaches right around the country, not just in Cornwall. And it's all about protecting this resource from a community perspective, from a wildlife perspective and from an economic perspective, and making sure that people are living in harmony with their coastal environment. Well, sites of special surfing interest, obviously we've got sites of special scientific interest, which is a well-known term, but sites of special surfing interest we want to be better recognised by government, by industry. And we're not talking just about the waves that people want to surf, we're talking about the whole surfing habitat. We're talking about the wildlife that can live in those areas, the reefs that can support the wildlife, we're talking about the sediment that comes in and out of those areas, we're talking about rare species, and we're talking about people's interaction with those zones. And we need to protect them holistically and support them holistically to create the sustainable future for Cornwall. And we see the coastline as being one of the key assets for the sustainable future of Cornwall. It's been part of the history and culture and folklore for forever. And so we need to carry on protecting that, and we're part of that. Well, I'm fascinated by actually the use of the term sustainability, and that it's not just about the environment, it's about people, it's about economies, and it's about them all coming together and making sure they work in harmony, basically. So sustainability is banded around the whole time, but it's about consideration and respect and building something that is an equitable share and an equitable vision for the future.
For my talk, I was talking about the future of Cornwall and how to build a more sustainable future in Cornwall. And there were three key points that I wanted to get across about that. The first point was that we need to radically rethink governance in Cornwall, full stop. We need to find a way of governance that means that people can actually have a say and feel like they can have a say about the things that are happening in their communities, whether we're talking about development or services or whatever people feel is happening or people feel needs to happen in their communities. So that was the first point, and it's a really vitally interesting time for that to happen at the moment because this decentralisation of power is on the political agenda UK wide because of that. Okay, the second point that I wanted to get across was that we need to be far better about talking about what Cornwall's good at and the fantastic things that we do, and we've got some absolutely amazing businesses and organisations doing some fantastic things, but we've become very, very used over the past couple of decades to talking about all of the problems and the reasons why we need extra help and the reasons why we need extra support, and we've been fantastic at it. We've got a whole bunch of extra help, a whole bunch of extra support, but we've also now got to got to say actually we need fair funding, but we need to shout about what we're ace at. And the third thing that we really need to be talking about much more strongly is that we need to be building better links with other regions, not just in the UK but also in Europe, because we're experiencing a lot of very similar issues with other parts of the UK and other parts of Europe. And I think collaborating with other regions and learning from each other would be a fantastic thing for us to do now in order to move forward to a more sustainable future.
I thought it was really interesting about the links between the one planet view, that it's not just our humans that inhabit this planet, it's also about the plants, about animals, and it's also about health and well-being. And the other thing was our cultural history is not only shaped Cornwall, but it's something that roots our lives in Cornwall.
It was really interesting because the theme was, should we be doing things from the top down or bottom up? And we had 3 presentations, all of which were about community-led, bottom-up projects. And they were all really energetic and exciting. And of course, they answered local needs, whereas obviously top-down doesn't. And I learnt a lot, actually. I learnt a lot about energy. I learnt a lot about Cornish identity themes. The presentation on hail was particularly interesting because, of course, that was just focused on one small place where there had been a lot of problems, a lot of dereliction, a lot of mining activity in the past, and the pressure group had made, I think, a considerable difference. And what was also interesting was that they were very worried about becoming part of the corporate world, and they wanted to retain their independence and a militant approach, so they could be a thorn in the side of people. And I thought it was very, very successful.